All right, we are on Genesis chapter 43. Kathy, where does Wordsby take breaks? Because I do think we probably need to do it in sections.
He does 1 to 10, 11 to 15, and then 14 to 17, 18 to 34.
Why don't we do through 15? I think Tony does through 14. And I think John, he breaks it down basically verse by verse. So, um, Kim, are you up to reading this morning through 15?
Yes, ma'am. So we're reading 1 through 15.
Correct.
Okay. Jacob lets Benjamin go. But there was no relief from the terrible famine throughout the land. When the grain they had brought from Egypt was almost gone, their father said to them, "Go again and buy us a little food." But Judah told him, "The man wasn't fooling one bit when he said, 'Don't ever come back again unless your brother is with you.' We cannot go unless you let Benjamin go with us." 6. "Why did you ever tell him you had another brother?" Israel moaned. "Why did you have to treat me like that?" "But the man specifically asked us about our family," they told him. "He wanted to know whether our father was still living, and he asked us if we had another brother, so we told him. How could we know that he was going to say, 'Bring me your brother'?" Judah said to his father, "Send the lad with me, and we will be on our way. Otherwise, we will all die of starvation, and not only we, but you and all our little ones. I guarantee his safety. If I don't bring him back to you, then let me bear the blame forever. For we could have gone and returned by this time if you had let him come." So their father Israel finally said to them, "If it can't be avoided, then at least do this. Load your donkeys with the best products of the land. Take them to the man as gifts: balm, honey, spices, myrrh, pistachio nuts, and almonds. Take double money so that you can pay back what is in the mouths of your sacks, as it was probably someone's mistake. And take your brother and go. May God Almighty give you mercy before the man, so that he will release Simeon and return Benjamin. And if I must bear the anguish of their deaths, then so be it." So they took the gifts and double money and went to Egypt and stood before Joseph.
Okay, so I'm a little perplexed. Like he left Simeon there for how long? Because they were to the point of not having food and they had to make this, what was it, like a 250-mile journey? And poor Simeon was there. And how did Joseph like not spill the beans?
The whole time he had Simeon.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
In my Bible, for verse 9, it has Judah accepted full responsibility for Benjamin's safety. He did not know what that might mean for him, but he was determined to do his duty. In the end, it was Judah's stirring words that caused Joseph to break down with emotion and reveal himself to his brothers. Apparently, that goes into chapter 44. Um, Accepting responsibility is difficult, but it builds character and confidence, earns others' respect, and motivates us to complete our work. So whatever Judah said, I guess we get to that in 44, then is what caused Joseph to
Well, mine,
tell him who he was.
I have a little side note here. It says Judah makes a risky and bold move in this passage, meaning 8 verses 8 and 9, in complete contrast to his cowardly and unrighteous behavior earlier in Genesis 37, 26 and 27 and 38, 11 through 26. When Judah was forced to act on this pledge, 44, yeah, you're right, 33 through 34. He remained faithful to his promise, offering himself as a slave so that his brother could avoid a similar fate. His substitutionary act would have allowed Benjamin to return to his father as a free man. Centuries later, one of Judah's descendants would offer himself in the place of sinners so they might be freed from their penalty and slavery. Judah's pledge of his life as the substitute for his younger brother is a striking parallel to Jesus' substitutionary sacrifice of his life for his adopted brothers and sisters, the church. Unlike Judah, however, Jesus did not contribute to the slavery of the church. Instead, Jesus graciously pledged himself as a substitute so that he might bring home his redeemed ones right into the Heavenly Father's very presence. I wonder how they all were, because I keep thinking of them like as kids, but they really probably weren't kids anymore. Because remember, Judah had the babies with Tamar, his daughter-in-law.
Well, if Joseph's 30, they're all way
They're
older
all
than
older.
he is.
Yeah, because he's one of the younger ones. Benjamin was the last one born. He was next to the youngest.
Yeah.
All right, Cindy, whenever you're ready.
Okay, verse 3. Solemnly warned us. The seriousness of Joseph's words portended failure for another mission to buy food unless the criterion he had set down was strictly met. Verse 9. I myself will be surety for him. Reuben's offer to guarantee the safety of Benjamin had been rejected, but Judah's was accepted because of the stress of the famine and the potential death of all if they waited much longer. Verse 11, a little. Likely this was a significant present because they had little left, but there was no future at all past the little if they did not get grain in Egypt. 14. Jacob's acquiescence to let Benjamin go ended with prayer for the brothers and Benjamin's safety, and with a cry of being a helpless victim of circumstances. Pessimism had apparently set into his heart and deepened after the loss of Joseph. And that's it.
Any thoughts? All right, Kathy.
Okay, delay 1 to 10. Week by week, the family watched their food supply diminish, but knowing their father's feelings, none of the sons dared to bring up the subject of a second trip to Egypt. The tension in the home must have been unbearable, especially for Benjamin. While Jacob was protecting his preferred son, who was voicing concern for Simeon in Egypt and his family, while Jacob was protecting his preferred son, who was voicing concern for Simeon in Egypt and his family in Canaan. Unwillingly to face reality, Jacob was living in a private dream world, making others suffer. When the supplies were gone, Jacob told his sons to go buy a little food, and that was the opportunity for Judah to step forward and take command of a delicate situation. There's a side note here. Judah's increasing leadership in the family begins to emerge, and this would be in chapters 44 and 46, and his descendants would become the royal tribe out of which the Messiah would come. What was I? Jacob's blindness to his unhealthy relationship with Benjamin and his selfish nurturing of grief over Joseph, plus his hidden suspicions about his sons, all combined to make him a man difficult to deal with. Judah reminded his father that they couldn't return to Egypt without taking Benjamin along. Jacob tried to put the blame on the boys for even mentioning their youngest brother, again trying to make them feel guilty because of his sorrows. Why did you bring this trouble on me? Judah wisely sidestepped debating with his father concerning issues that had come up before about matters that couldn't be changed. Judah offered to become surety for Benjamin to guarantee his safe return home. This generous offer indicates that Judah had experienced a change of heart since the sale of Joseph in chapter 37. Perhaps his experience with Tamar had taught him some lessons. Judah made it clear that this is a matter of life and death, and even reminded Jacob of his own words. Unbelief, verses 11 to 15. There's a difference between surrendering to God's loving providence and bowing to blind faith, and Jacob's statements show where he stood. If it must be so, if I am bereaved of my children, I am bereaved. This kind of response certainly doesn't sound like the Jacob of Bethel who claimed the promises of God and had angels caring for him. Nor is it the Jacob who led his family back to Bethel for a new beginning with the Lord. His feelings of grief and despair had almost extinguished his faith. Always the controller, Jacob told his sons exactly what to do. Of course, there had to be a present for the Egyptian ruler who could release Simeon. They had to take twice the amount of money so they would return the money they found in the sacks, as well as purchase more food. It's interesting that Jacob said, "Take your brother also," and not, "Take also my son." Was he emphasizing their personal responsibility to take care of their own flesh and blood? He sent them off with his blessing, asking that El Shaddai change the heart of the man so he would show mercy by releasing Simeon and not hurting Benjamin. But his final statement didn't give evidence of much faith or hope. If I be bereaved of my children, Joseph, Benjamin, and Simeon, I am bereaved. Perhaps he wanted those pathetic words to echo in his son's mind as they journeyed to Egypt. That's it.
Kind of irritated with Jacob because it's like almost like the food was more important than his kid. Like his child wasn't important enough to go back, but now that they need food, he's going to go back.
Seems like he has a lot of selfishness there.
Yeah, I don't.
It's all about him, his feelings.
Well, I thought that when in verse 6, when he said, "Why did you ever tell him you had another brother?" Israel moaned. Why did you have to treat me like that?
Yeah, I thought that too, Kim. That kind of stuck out to me whenever you read that.
Yeah. I'm like, that's a weird thing to say.
Treat me.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, 1 to 7. Well, I mean, he was irritated with them too, because like if he was suspicious of Joseph disappearing, and then they had the whole issue with the sister being raped, and they killed off that entire town and faced their dad when they did that. And now here we are with his other favorite son being at risk. And I'm sure he was
Yeah.
proud of Judah for sleeping with his daughter-in-law, Tamar.
When you have 12 sons, something's going to happen.
True story.
Somewhere.
No, it is a misconception that, I mean, and I had myself before I really spent time in the Bible, that these people are they're so holy and they're so good and they're just, they can do no wrong. And it's like, no, they are just as human as we are.
Just as messed up, if not more.
With all the same faults, right? If not more.
All right. Tony Evans, 43, 1 through 7. As the famine dragged on, Jacob's family soon used up the grain they had brought back from Egypt, and Jacob instructed his sons to go get more, prompting Judah to remind him of Joseph's words, "You will not see me again unless your brother is with you." Jacob, greatly upset, began to wonder about the mysterious man with whom they were dealing with in Egypt, and he asked, "Why did you tell the man that you had another brother?" Jacob was finding himself in a position of helplessness, and exactly where exact place where God wanted him. Often it's when we have nowhere else to turn that we are finally willing to look to God for deliverance. 8 and 9. Judah stepped up to take responsibility for Benjamin. If I do not bring him back, I will be guilty before you forever. Interestingly, Judah was the man who spearheaded the conspiracy to sell Joseph into slavery in the first place. He was the impulsive man who slept with his own daughter-in-law, and then hypocritically demanded her death. But clearly, this was not the same Judah making so selfless a vow. God had been softening his heart over the last 20 years, shaping him into the sort of vessel that he could use. Would it say yesterday he needed 20 years to get him where he needed him when he was talking about Joseph? 10 through 14. Jacob reluctantly agreed to Jacob reluctantly agreed to send his sons, Benjamin in tow, back to Egypt. He suggested that they take valuable local gifts, a little balsam, a little honey, aromatic gum and resin, probably frankincense, pistachios and almonds to curry favor with Egypt's demanding leader. He also sent twice as much silver as before, thus replacing the returned silver that Joseph could have claimed was stolen and providing money for more grain. But even though he sent them out with a prayer and a blessing, Jacob was patently pessimistic. He assumed that Benjamin would die. Any other insight thoughts before we move on to the next section? Which, Kathy, what is your next section?
It does 16 to 23 and
Let's
then
do-
24 through 34.
Let's do through 23 because that's a shorter section. We only got like 15 minutes. And Tony's pretty short on that section. So, Kim, do you want to read that? 15
Yes,
to 23.
Through 23 or up to through 22?
Through 23.
Okay. 16. When Joseph saw that Benjamin was with them, he said to the manager of his household, "These men will eat with me this noon. Take them home and prepare a big feast, big feast." So the man did as he was told and took them to Joseph's palace. They were badly frightened when they saw where the people were being taken. "It's because of the money returned to us in our sacks," they said. "He wants to pretend we stole it and seize us as slaves with our donkeys." As they arrived at the entrance to the palace, they went over to Joseph's household manager and said to him, "Oh, sir, after our first trip to Egypt to buy food as we were returning home, we stopped for the night and opened our sacks, and the money was there that we had paid for the grain. Here it is. We have brought it back again, along with additional money to buy more grain. We have no idea how the money got into our sacks." "Don't worry about it," the household manager told them. "Your God, even the God of your fathers, must have put it there, for we collected your money all right."
Huh.
Oh, then he released Simeon and brought him out to them.
That's interesting. Cindy?
Okay, it's just one verse is covered in John for all that. Verse 23. Your God has given. This is an indication of Joseph's steward either having come to faith in God or having become very familiar with how Joseph talked of his God in life. So concerned were the brothers to protest their ignorance of the means of the money being returned and to express their desire to settle this debt, that they missed the steward's clear reference to the God of Israel, quotes, "the God of your father," and his oversight of events in which he had played a part, quotes, I had your money. That's it.
That's interesting too, because in 42, the same thing happened whenever in verse 28, 42:28, he said, what is this that God has done to us? Oh, hang on, no, that was the wrong place. I'm sorry, 18. Do this and you will live, for I fear God. They didn't recognize that statement there either. So that's twice that they didn't recognize the reference. Kathy?
Hey, to answer your question earlier, Chrissy, about how long was Simeon left there?
Yeah.
And I have a footnote that says some months later, when it was time to return to Egypt for more food, Jacob paid back double the cost of the grain to maintain his integrity. So it was several months.
I'm just going to put months later with an exclamation mark. What kind of parent does that? All right, Kate.
Okay. Lost my place. The 9 brothers had enough to think about on their trip without pondering their father's chronic grief. In fact, they faced 3 difficult problems for which they had no answers. 1, explaining to the officials why they had the money. 2, effecting Simeon's release from confinement. And 3, protecting Benjamin. But by the time they were heading back home, they thought all these problems had been solved. The problem of the money, verses 16 to 23a. It's likely that some of Joseph's servants saw the brothers entering the city and quickly informed him of their arrival. He arranged for a banquet at his house, but the brothers concluded that they were going to his house because they were in trouble. Somebody knew about the money, and they would be arrested and punished, perhaps even enslaved or killed. In a situation like that, you look for the nearest mediator, and they wisely turned to Joseph's steward. If they could convince him of their innocence, then he could present their case to Joseph, who might excuse them. They were in for another surprise because the steward knew more about the money than they did, and he assured them they had nothing to fear. Simon's release, 23b. The steward then went to get Simeon, and he brought him to his brothers. It must have been a time of great rejoicing, and Simeon was especially grateful that Benjamin had come along to rescue him. How did the steward know that Benjamin was present and that Simeon should be released? Joseph told him. Did Simeon learn anything from his time in confinement? If Jacob's words on his deathbed are any indication, he probably didn't. And this will go to chapter 49, verses 5 to 7. It's tragic when we waste our suffering and don't use it as an opportunity to grow. That's it.
Okay, 15 through 23. When Joseph's brothers returned, they were taken to Joseph's personal house, a turn of events that hardly inspired any confidence in them. Approaching Joseph's steward, they attempted to clear up the misunderstanding about the money, but the steward replied, "Your God, the God of your father, must have put treasure in your bags." This suggests that Joseph's faith must have spread to his staff because there was an Egyptian servant invoking the name of God of the Hebrews. Apparently, Joseph had been talking about the Lord from the time he was a slave in Potiphar's house right up until the present moment of prosperity. This begs the question, are you speaking up about God in every moment of your life, in the moments of adversity, as well as in the moments of prosperity? I think they were like they had like a pantheology, like they believed in many gods, so this god would have been a part of many gods. So like like if you think, oh, I wonder why they didn't like persecute him for believing in a different god. I think they believed in many gods. So he would have just been added into, not for Joseph. For Joseph, he would have been the only god, but for the Egyptians, it would have just been another god.
Well, I didn't understand that in verse 23. when the household manager said, your God, even the God of your fathers, must have put it there.
Hmm.
I didn't.
Yeah, they recognize it as like Isaac and Abraham's God.
As separate gods.
Well, no, but he was separate from the gods they worshipped. But in their culture, they would have worshipped many gods. So the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Joseph would have been just added into with a bunch of other gods for the Egyptians, but for Joseph, not.
Yeah.
So like that's why they were very, I think, in my opinion, that's why they would be very accepting of God.
Israel's God.
Israel's
Yeah,
God. Yeah.
they had gods for the moon, the sun, the water, the earth.
Mhm.
You know, everything had a God.
Yeah, I just looked it up and they were polytheists and they worshiped over 1,400 different gods.
There you go. The God of the Hebrews just slid in there and they didn't think anything of it.
So it would have made sense that they would have honored him and recognized that his God was prospering him or whatever without attacking him about it.
And not to
1,400.
say that God couldn't have put that money there, but in my Bible, the note says, how did the money get into the sacks? Most likely Joseph instructed his steward to replace the money and then explain it with this response. Note that the steward credited their God, not some Egyptian deity, which was my thinking anyways, that Joseph told the steward to put that money there. I mean, not saying God couldn't put it there, but
Well, God put it there through Joseph.
Yeah.
right.
If you guys ever want to put money in my bags,
Yeah,
I
right.
credit, I'm okay with it.
What do you mean? I pay you almost every Sunday.
Any other thoughts on that? I thought it was interesting. I didn't think about the 9 brothers, actually, the pressure they would have been under heading back over, again, a long, dangerous journey, and having to explain why they had the money, having to arrange Simeon's release, and also having to worry about bringing Benjamin back home for their dad. Like that's a lot of responsibility and pressure.
But the dad went too, right? I thought at some point, or was it later maybe that he goes?
I think dad comes back.
It's later.
After they find out it's Joseph.
Yeah, because he knew the whole clan there.
Okay.
And he put them in the land of Goshen.
All right. Are we ready for trivia? Mom, you playing?
Sorry.
What did Pilate put on the cross above Jesus's head?
Cross.
King of the Jews.
Jews.
There was too many of you at one time. What would you say?
Mine that said King of the Jews.
Yes, that is correct, Julie. Is that what everybody else said too?
Amber
Yes.
did. I heard Amber say it.
Yeah, John 19:19, a sign that read, Jesus of Nazareth, the King of the Jews. Little did he know, he actually was the King of the Jews. All right, this concludes the reading of God's Word for today. Until tomorrow.
For sure. For certain.
Monday.
No, not tomorrow.
All right, have a good weekend, guys.